What's up guys, Kobo here, and with a PCS7 Finals getting closer and closer, and a lot of teams struggling to make it to PGC, I had a bit of a look at the different scenarios that have to happen for the teams to make it, and I thought why not share it with you guys, so you don't have to. So in this video, we'll be looking at the teams that are already qualified, the teams that are most likely qualified. We'll look at some of the interesting teams like BBL and Heroic, and then we will also have a look at every major team on the scoreboard to see what has to happen for them to make it to Worlds. Let's get into it. So if we have a look at the list of the teams on Wikipedia, there's two things that really pop out. The first place of PCS7 always goes. So whoever wins PCS7 will go to Worlds. It's simple as that. We see that Northern Lights and Entropic are already qualified, and we see that BBL is fighting for the MEA slot, which is quite interesting. Obviously, top 8 is the cutoff. 8 teams will go. That cutoff can shift if there's no CIS or MEA team in the top 8. We'll talk about that later. So what I've done first is to give you a little bit of an overview. Is I've made a tier list really with the 16 teams that play PCS7 Finals, and then the 3 teams that didn't make it to PCS7 Finals who still have a chance. Those teams would be Heroic, it would be BBL, and then the last one is Entropic, who is already guaranteed. The second team that's already guaranteed is NLT. They have even more points than Entropic. And then we have 3 teams that, or I'd say we have FaZe and Na'Vi, who are basically guaranteed. We'll have a look at those different scenarios later. There's an amazing Reddit post that I will link as well, where they went through the probabilities, and it's just extremely unlikely that FaZe or Na'Vi do not qualify, even if they get last in the finals. There's a few teams who need some good points. I'd say leading that is Overpeakers. Then we have behind them Polish Power, and we have ENCE, who are all in good positions, in solid positions to fight for their PCS slots. If they perform decently, they should have a good chance of making it to Worlds. Then we have the next pack, which is Question Mark, Footballists, Howl, and Stardust, who all have a few points on the board. But not enough points to really matter. It basically just buys them 1 slot ahead of all the others. And the others are what I call the 0 pointers, teams that go into this with no points on their PGC leaderboard, who need a top 3 to really have a good chance. 4th would be incredibly unlikely. What I've done here is a quick spreadsheet. I'll link that as well in a Google Drive, to make you play around with the different positions and what they mean. One thing that you'll very quickly see is I made a sort of points list on what has to happen for teams to catch up to BBL. Heroic's not on that list, they can't get any more points. And a point list what needs to happen for teams to catch Heroic. That very quickly ends us at a very simple scenario for Heroic, where none of these teams can get this amount of points. It's very simple because they're in 8th. They're very easy to get kicked out. For BBL, the situation is very different though, because for BBL, they have the MEA slot. The Heroic scenario is extremely simple. ENCE below 8th, they cannot get more. If you put ENCE into 8th right now, this is what I'm doing here, they would already be qualified. If you put ENCE into 9th, then this is not red because it doesn't pass Heroic. That's sort of my spreadsheet when what it's doing. Question Mark, Howl, Foot, and Stardust all need to be below 5th. If you're putting them here, no game. If you're putting Stardust in 5th, they have already passed Heroic. The 0 pointers, they all need to be below 4th. If you put an Ascend in here, it's not past Heroic because they have 205 points. But if you put Austrian Force in 4th, they would pass Heroic. Remember, 1 team passing Heroic, done. If you remember what we just said about the Heroic scenario, we said ENCE need to be out of the top 8 for Heroic to make it. We need Question Mark, Howl, Foot, and Stardust somewhere around, but below the top 5. That is the important part. They cannot be top 5. And then the teams with 0 points, they cannot be in a top 4. So if we're looking at, let's say, an NLT winning, a Na'Vi in 2nd, FaZe in 3rd, the Overpeaks in 4th, Polish Power in 5th, for example. And then we have some of the teams that don't really expect to do as well down in the lower ranks. Then this could easily work out for Heroic. It's this thing where this falls apart is Ensign would have to get bottom 8. That doesn't seem extremely likely. Question Mark is a team that could definitely get top 5 as well. So that's where they're a little bit scared. But I think mainly for Heroic, it's likely to depend on Ents getting into that bottom 8. Otherwise, they can't qualify. Now that we've talked about Heroic, the BBL scenario is a much more complicated one. But it's simple in a way that if none of the other MEA teams pass BBL, they have the guaranteed MEA slot. For that to happen, Howl, Foot, and Stardust are the 3 MEA teams that can catch them, and they need 250 or 260 points to catch them, which means they need a top 3. If neither of these 3 teams gets top 3, it's already done. But if, let's say, Howl gets top 3, they would pass BBL. BBL no longer has the secured slot, goes down into 6th. And then we need BBL to drop out from 6th to 9th, which means 3 teams need to pass them. It's quite likely for Overpeakers and Polish Power to be able to do that. Overpeakers would only not need bottom 2. So if Overpeakers are here, already past BBL. If Overpeakers are here though, they would not be past BBL, they would only pass Heroic. So Overpeakers would have either, so you need 3 teams to pass, right? And there's a lot of possibilities. Overpeakers getting top 14, Polish Power getting top 7, Ents getting a top 5. That would be 3 teams. Quick clarification here. The reason that Overpeakers would pass BBL with 290 points is because the tiebreaker means best performing team in the last PGC tournament, which is PCS7. So getting 14th here is better than BBL not qualifying, wins the tiebreaker. That is, like I said, 3 teams passed plus Howl passed, or whatever MEA team gets third place. And then there's also a chance for this other slot in the top 3. There is multiple here to get passed up by a team with 0 points or a team that needs a top 3. For example, you could put in the fellas here, and then that would be another chance for another team to pass. Now we're already at 5 teams past BBL. You see there's a lot of different options, but at least 4 of them need to happen. One of them being MEA team needs to pass. So in a way for BBL, it's easier to say, how do they not make it? Well, it's like this, and then you wouldn't need to be, the Overpeakers would only need to be above, would be anywhere on this leaderboard. They could even be in 13th or 14th. And then you would be looking at Polish Power being 7th or higher. That would already be 2 teams passing them, or 3 teams together with Howl. And then the 4th team could, for example, be a Question Mark, putting themselves in the top 4, or an Ends putting themselves in the top 5. Or Question Mark. For BBL, I think it's a little bit easier to look at how they don't qualify, because it's fairly unlikely, I think. So they would need one of these 3 teams to be in 3rd or better to lose their MEA slot, their guaranteed MEA slot. They would need Ends to be 5th or higher. Overpeakers to be 14th or higher. That's really easy. Polish Power to be 7th or higher. Those would be 3 teams already passing them. Together with the 1 MEA team, that would already be enough. Remember that in 5th, if they get 9th, they're out. Then another chance is for any of the hunting teams, so Question Mark as well, to get into the top 3. And then for any of the 0 pointers to get into a top 2. So an Exalt, Woo, Win or Die, Ascent, Fellas, or Austrian Force make it into top 2. This is one of the chances. The second one is Question Mark. The third one is Ends. The 4th one is Polish Power. The 5th one would be Overpeakers. Out of these 5, 3 need to happen. And then this one, the MEA team in top 3, needs to happen. Otherwise, BBL always go. Now, the further we go down the leaderboard, the more complicated it gets. I think overpeakers, they basically only need a few points. If they push themselves above BBL, they are very likely to stay in. Polish Power, they're looking at 100 points would be nice for them. A top 7 would be really good for Polish Power. Once again, that BBL cutoff is sort of a good line to look at. It always depends on how the other teams perform, but you should expect Northern Lights, FaZe, and Na'Vi to sponge up a few of those points. These are extremely complicated, especially Overpower's Polish Power, and Overpeaker's Polish Power, and to a certain extent Ends as well, because they depend so much on the other teams. The further down you go the line, it gets simpler because more things have to happen. It's much more defined. If you're looking at Question Mark, for example, the absolute minimum they need to have is a top 5 to catch Heroic. 155 points is enough. So if Question Mark get that, they have 225. They pass Heroic. That only works though if they don't get passed again, because right now they have pushed themselves with a 5th place. They push themselves into 8th, and possibly past Polish Power as well. But for that to happen, Polish Power needs to basically not get any points. So first, we're going to see what's the minimum for Question Mark, and that is Ends not getting up to that 225 mark, which means Ends needs to go outside of the top 7. 215, they don't pass Question Mark. MEA teams, you can see they are just 10 points or 20 points behind Question Mark. So all that they don't need to do is beat Question Mark. If they finish out of the top 4, then they don't make it. So if we put a Stardust in here, no chance. If we put a Stardust in 4th, they would have qualified over Question Mark. It's different with the 0-pointer teams. If you put an Ascend in here, then they barely miss out because they just have 0 placement points right now and they end up on 220. That's the Question Mark scenario. If you're looking at the Howl, Foot, and Stardust scenario, these 3 teams, it's the same scenario, except they are always guaranteed in 3rd place, because that means they get the guaranteed spot. And then if you go down the leaderboard to the 0-pointers, I think you can just look at how many points you need. 4th place is not going to be enough. It can, but it is unlikely to be enough. The 3rd place is, I think, a reasonable point to be. It could work. And the 2nd place is going to be enough. So a top 2 should be enough for any team on this list. You're passing BBL. You're taking a lot of points away from your opponent. A 3rd place is rough, and a 4th place could work, but it's very tricky. One last thing that I've kind of ignored throughout the video is that obviously the team that qualifies to PCS7 always goes, and that means if a team outside of the top 8 goes, let's say Howl Esports win PCS7, then there is only 7 slots left in that top 8. This is another scenario where Heroic gets beaten out. This is another scenario where a team could get enough points to get into the top 8 but not qualify. I think it's unlikely. I think the top teams are so strong at the moment that it's not super likely that someone out of the top 8, like an Ents or a Howl or a Stardust, can win PCS7, but it is a theoretical chance. All right, I think that just about does it. Obviously, you can't discuss every single probability. That's why I'm linking you the spreadsheet if you want to check out some different combinations yourself. And other than that, I hope you enjoyed the bit of a summary. It went way longer than I thought it would go. That is a tendency that I have with PUBG videos. I'm sorry about that. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, thank you so much for sticking with me. If you would like to support me, you can always use my PUBG creator code. I'll link it in the description as well, together with the Google Sheet and the Reddit post that I mentioned earlier. And other than that, I hope you guys have a great time. I'll see you guys around for the next PUBG video in the next year or so.